Well, welcome back to the Encounter Faith Podcast, everybody. My name is Ross, and I'm privileged to have these conversations, especially when I get to sit down with Pastor Tara Beth. Pastor Tara Beth, it's fun to say welcome to someone who is technically paying me to do this. So I appreciate it either way. But we are in this series at Good Shepherd where we're talking about how we as a people are sent to serve. And this is language that Good Shepherd is very familiar with, but it's something that I would assume that if you're taking the time to listen to my voice, dear listener, you don't necessarily need us to explain. But one of the interesting things about putting this series together was realizing the amount of groundwork that I felt like we needed to lay about the type of people we're meant to be, the type of people where we're supposed to show up, how we're supposed to show up before we even get into some of the particulars of serving. So I thought the way to kind of tee you up and let you go was to ask you the question, what does serving mean? When we talk about being sent to serve, what are we hoping people grab? Because I think sometimes when churches talk about this, it can trigger a lot of responses in people that are ultimately not what we're hoping they pick up from it. So what is serving, Pastor Tara Beth?
So when I think about the word serve, I also have to think about the word mercy. So a lot of people think that mercy means forgiveness or mercy means giving someone a break. Or when I was growing up, we played a game called Mercy where you lock your hands together and you twist the arms and whoever says mercy first loses. So
Sure.
I used to kind of think of more like giving pity, right?
Okay, nice.
But mercy is an action-oriented term. And mercy means love in action or also serving in action. And so when we think about serving, we also have to think about the idea of biblical mercy, which is going to a person that is in need or a people or a community that is in need. And we're doing it because it's born out of love, the love of God that compels us to embody mercy. And when you look at also like the biblical arc, like the mission of God, like the entire Bible, it has this arc of the mission of God redeeming all of creation. And we have been from the very beginning called to partner with God in this. You see this in the covenants and covenant theology, and you really see this culminate in the book of Acts when the Holy Spirit falls upon all people, and then the people are empowered to serve in ways that are unique to the gifts that God has given them.
I love that. And I like how you're leaning into some of this collective impact, because for those of you who listen to the podcast each week, first of all, thanks. But you heard Pastor Elizabeth talk about serving rooted in this idea of part of our mission statement of walking together. And I like that you are coming at this almost from the next step in this mission statement around towards lives of eternal impact. One of the things that I think is important to call out, though, is that one, churches can sometimes do this in really harmful ways. You know, things like savior complex on short-term mission trips and other things that folks who listen to this probably are familiar with. But also, I think sometimes when churches try to galvanize their people, it comes across that those people aren't doing enough. We're dealing with some church guilt and around that. When we talk about lives of eternal impact, how do you help folks move it from an item on a to-do list and instead what you just said of rooted out of how Christ's love for us overflows into our surrounding communities?
Yeah, no, that's so good, because it can be really easy to start thinking about serving as a check off the box, you know, and I think that's one of the things, like I see our staff even fall into that trap, because our staff is panicked. They need to fill slots and they've got job descriptions. And so they start using the word volunteer, and that gets all wrapped up in volunteerism. But what we really want to do, and what we ought to do as a church, is start forming a culture that reflects the likeness of Christ. And how do you do that? Well, you immerse yourself in the presence of God in Scripture, invite people to learn what it means to walk in the Spirit, right? The Apostle Paul says, walk in the Spirit, which means that is a daily, moment by moment, minute by minute thing. And oh, by the way, when we're in the Spirit, we're filled with the fruits of the Spirit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And that's like a natural flowing out. And so the more that we get to know the love of God, the more than that we are compelled. So serving shouldn't be a check off the box, like I did my serving for the week, but a lifestyle where we're always looking for places where we can go, where God is going, where God is calling us to serve, because part of the redeeming creation is not just waiting for that to happen, but it's here and now. And when the people of God are going into places where God is calling us to go, we're seeing that kingdom of heaven break in right then and there.
Right. I think it's really important because I think too often we burn folks out, we being well-meaning Christian folk. We burn others out because the need is so big, and where we pour resources into, folks don't feel like it's enough to and to be connected to that need. But also that we sometimes can become blind to the ways in which seasons of life or individual giftings can make certain serving ways to serve more appealing, or certain times of serving more appealing. Like in the season of life that my family's in with having young kids, if we are able to plan something and then follow through on that plan, where nobody got sick, nobody was all of a sudden not available with another young family, it feels like a miracle. And I think when it looks like serving for us, if you're someone who's got like a newborn at home, serving is getting out of bed sometimes.
Right.
And yet it's a lifestyle. It's because it's born out of relationship.
Yeah, you're not thinking like, oh, I did. I mean, I guess this is why some couples fight over childcare, but I mean, you're not thinking like, oh, I did my duty today, I'm done.
Right.
And if you do that leads to a really unhealthy family dynamic.
Totally.
And similarly, like within the context of community, we're not thinking I did my part, I'm done, but it's, no, you're always.
Right. Because then the beauty of the different ways in which God wired us allows for a greater collective impact. I talked about this example, but you and I are people who like to be in front of people. We like to talk. And it's the old Jerry Seinfeld joke about public speaking is a greater fear than death. So people would rather be in the box than giving the eulogy. And the way you and I are drawn to serving is naturally going to lead towards some of those gifts. There's a lot of folks who listen who think that serving has to be that type of high profile role. What does it look like for folks to be able to kind of catch a vision for serving the way that God wired them? I think about, there's a woman here who organizes the snacks for VBS. And that is her holy ground. She is so excited about that. She does such an amazing job of loving on these kids. And nearly every one of those kids doesn't know that it comes from her. But she, that is how God made her. And it's a joy to serve alongside her and watch her do that. But that's harder for people to understand, and that's an opportunity. What does it look like for folks who are gifted more in administrative things or organizational things, or things that don't necessarily feel as high of profile, to understand how that's still a part of the collective impact you're describing?
Yeah. I mean, it makes a massive impact because, Paul talks about like the distribution of gifts, right? And we need all the gifts at play so that everyone can be working in the highest and best use of who they are, of who God has called them to be. And every bit of it is important. I would not be able to do my job, for example, if it were not for Vivica Rising, who helps manage my calendar and organize my calendar. Serving is, we need all parts of it. And, I think about, I shared this in the sanctuary, but not everybody listening to the podcast was in the sanctuary. Our basement flooded severely while we were on vacation.
Right.
And there were two couples in our basement because we were in Canada, and they insisted we not come home. And Audra and Max Shiwi and Janice and Jeff Rubin showed up in our stinky, smelly basement and pulled out disgusting, smelly rugs and garbage. And they did it when no one else was watching. But that was just in their nature.
Yeah.
It was just in their nature.
And born out of their relationship with you guys, born out of the ways in which you make yourself accessible to them. I think sometimes it's easy for folks, especially in an American culture, to have those high moments of need. And in your situation, come home from Canada rather than even ask. And I love being known well enough where folks are able to just reach out to you saying, here's what we're going to do. Yeah. You're going to stay. Yeah. You're going to enjoy this. Yeah. We're going to grab the Shiwis and it's going to be fine.
Yeah. And it was so hard for me.
Of course.
It was so hard. I was like, nope, I'm flying home. Like,
yeah.
And no, Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to pay attention to examples like that, because I think sometimes we paint too narrow of a picture for serving.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who it was, and whoever it was, I'm sure they're listening to the podcast, so I apologize. But I remember talking to someone who looked at serving at the church as sort of like, we did the hard work for you. Like, these opportunities exist not because we think it is the best thing ever, but it's because we go, well, serving's about a relationship with Jesus, but sometimes it's hard to figure out what that means. So here's some things that might fill you that way, that allow you to go, oh, this is me doing the work I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. But a lot of churches are really bad at that. Mm-hmm. And we obviously sometimes get bad at that. I'm curious from how you think about leading a church and leading folks who are sort of trying to galvanize those people, how we avoid falling into some of those traps to where we're, like you said earlier, we are filling slots, or we are casting too narrow of a vision for serving. What does it look like to cast that high vision of serving that allows for the kind of outcome that when your basement's flooding, those are the people who are showing up?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I think I could cast vision all day until my face is blue, but it is not going to make an impact unless the people who are looking for servers make themselves accessible and have that kind of relationship, which is what you just talked about with the Rubens and the Shiwis coming to us. I had a relationship with them. And, when I was serving in high school youth ministry, I would ask people out to lunch or a dinner or a coffee and really get to know them. And then eventually I would make that big ask. And I think, it's really tempting to put out mass emails and hope that people, jump in. But really, like, if we're in relationship with people and they feel like they are wanted, people want to feel wanted and pursued.
Right.
And if they feel like that, then I think that that's where any vision that we cast as a church really begins to dance and work.
Yeah. Obviously, I want folks who are listening, spoiler alert, like, I do hope you are serving. The last question I have is, one of the things that I think anybody can be doing a good job of too is celebrating serving, celebrating people like the Rubens who just show up, celebrating people like the Shiwis in that case. But sometimes I'm thinking about a friend of mine who he takes freelance engineering jobs so that he can write a bigger check to World Relief just because he really believes in what the work they're doing. And no, I don't know what freelance engineering jobs mean, dear listener. To use the Rubens and the Shiwis as an example, my assumption is you didn't, go out of your way to be like, hey, you guys are the best. Like, I'm so sorry that we had our flooded basement. Like, you weren't, it was because of their love that they did that. So then you responded in kind by continuing that relationship. But how do we avoid the trap of treating serving like it's this exchange and kind of Christian niceness, diluting the vision you're describing?
Yeah, I know that can be really dangerous when it's like, I'll do this for you, you do this for me, and or I've done it when we start.
I owe you one.
Yeah, or I owe you one, because then it becomes almost like counting, and when we start doing that, then that's where bitterness starts to set in. That's where frustration or jealousy or the idea of fairness.
Sure.
But if instead we viewed serving not as what I'm doing for you, but out of the goodness of God, out of the love of God, who laid down his life for us so that we can live in freedom and righteousness, then why not? Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't we want to serve? And so we've got to always check our motives and check our reason.
Yeah. Last question for me then is, if I'm looking to start serving and I don't know people, whether it's this church, other people, obviously we have a incredibly remarkable miracle of a gift with LJ to be able to introduce people to, who oversees all of our connections here at Good Shepherd. But what is the encouragement you can offer to that person who doesn't know someone, who's either going to reach out to LJ and is about to meet one of the nicest people God's ever made, or is going to reach out to whoever the person is at whatever the nonprofit is that they're thinking about serving, but they just don't know how to get started? How do you help those people get started?
Yeah, I mentioned about making that big ask. That can go both ways.
Nice. Yeah, good.
Don't wait to be asked. Don't wait to be recruited. If you want to be part of something, put yourself in those rooms, put yourself in those spaces. I can tell you every single person on our staff, for example, is thrilled when someone actually comes to them and says, I want to get involved. I hope that you, dear listener, get pursued, but
of course,
sometimes there's misses. And so make that big ask.
Thank you for listening to the Encounter Faith podcast. This podcast is a service of G. Shep Productions from Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Naperville, Illinois. All rights reserved. If you're in the area, we'd love to meet you on a Sunday morning at our 9 a.m. or 10:45 services. At Good Shepherd, we are inviting everyone to walk together in the calling of Christ for a life of eternal impact. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Ross Cochran. And our theme song is Wake the Earth by 1111 Worship. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.